welcome Ellen Finnegan. I'm very glad you had the time to talk with me and with other Danish Catholics who hopefully will look at this video. As I've
Thank you.
told you,
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you and to meet a fellow Catholic in Denmark and to sort of virtually meet your audience. Hello, and hello from the United States. Yeah.
Thank you so much. The Danish Catholic Church has maybe changed its focus a bit the last 30 years. More than 30 years ago, it was very focused on Germany, and nearly all our catechesis materials, all our theological books and so on, they came from Germany. But now they come from USA. So
Really?
USA is considered in Denmark, maybe also other European countries, as a main Catholic country. And
Wow.
That's very good.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a little bit of a resurgence of the Catholic faith. It's mostly happening more in the traditional circles, the traditional side of the church with the Latin Mass and everything. I don't attend Latin Mass simply because I don't have one in my town, but that seems to be where a lot of the energy is right now.
Okay. You know, I made this list with questions for you, and the first question is, could you present yourself in a short way? You don't have to go into details. You're Catholic, you're living in USA, and you're a woman. That's what I know.
I'm a Catholic. I'm a teacher. I teach high school students. And in 2013, I started a website called Catholics Against Militarism, because I saw the way that my country I started learning more about my country and what we've been up to for the past 80 years, 50, 60, 70 years. And I realized that a lot of what we were doing, especially with our invasion of Iraq, was completely not licit, morally good. Not morally good. War is never morally good. But it also was not a just war by any standard, according to the Catholic Church. And I noticed that my church was not saying anything about that. And I also noticed that there was a split in American Catholicism, where anti-war was seen as a leftist, liberal thing. And if you were conservative, you couldn't be anti-war. But I started noticing more and more conservatives who were speaking out against our foreign policy from a Catholic perspective. And so I wanted to create a website that kind of allowed for all opinions on war and violence that was approved by the Catholic Church from left to right. So we try to include all of those perspectives as long as it's in alignment with church teaching. And then last year I started a podcast where I decided I was going to start interviewing a lot of the people that I had met who had had an influence on me, and I wanted to introduce my audience to those people.
And when you say podcast, you mean a YouTube channel with interviews, am I right?
It is on YouTube. Yeah, it's also a regular podcast that you can get on podcast software in the audio version. But I also was putting it on YouTube if people wanted to watch the videos. Yeah.
Very good. You're quite professional with digital medias, I think.
With the what?
Please? I think you're quite skilled with what you do compared to our standard here in Denmark.
Oh wow, thanks. I hardly know what I'm doing with the technology, but I'm working my way through it.
Very good, very good. Yeah. So I can't answer how many members are there in Catholics Against Militarism, because it's not a normal organization. It's some kind of network or idea. Am I right?
Yeah, it's more of it's just a website. We don't have members, official members. We don't collect money from anyone. I don't accept money for my podcast. I just had started blogging, and then over time I've had 3 other people say that they became familiar with my blog and wanted to join me. So I said, sure. So we have, it's me, myself and Paul and Eric and Doug. And so there's just 4 of us that contribute to the blog. I mostly do the podcast, and it's very informal. So there's really just 4 of us, and then I think we have about 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. I don't know if they would consider themselves Catholics Against Militarism, but probably they have an affinity for what we're talking about because they subscribe to the channel.
Very good. Do you know if there are similar websites or Catholics in other countries, Catholics Against Militarism in Germany, France, Italy, and so on? Because here in Denmark, I'm the only one, I can tell you. You don't have to look for any more.
Well, you're not really allowed to be for militarism if you are a Catholic. Because militarism is not approved. It's not an approved stance or attitude of the Catholic Church. And we can get into that in a second. But there are other groups that are, I guess, what we call it in America is peace and justice. Peace and justice groups, which are concerned with anti-war and social justice. But my experience has been that they tend to be more of almost more political, in that they basically seem to completely accept the Democratic Party platform. So in the United States, we have Republicans and we have Democrats. And the problem that I've noticed with people who speak out against war from a Catholic perspective is that their mission tends to grow. It's mission creep. So they start being against war, but then they have to be against this, and then they have to be against that, and then they have to be for that. And so all of a sudden it loses its focus
against everything. They
end
up being against everything.
They're kind of against everything, and they have, they get all these other causes tacked on. So it's really hard because then you get the conservative Catholics who will not associate or buy into all of that because it comes in this whole package with other things that they disagree with. So I'm thinking of, for example, like Pax Christi is an international organization.
Pax Christi, I know this organization. Actually, we have it in Denmark too.
And so I like Pax Christi. I think they do a lot of good things, but they're kind of, in my opinion, an example of an organization that is kind of become about so much that it lost its original focus on being anti-war. There's also something. Go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know if I used the wrong word. Of course, I'm talking about Catholic Against Militarism. Maybe you misunderstood me before. But maybe you can tell, what is militarism?
Militarism, as we define it, is, I wrote it down just so I could get it right. It is the belief that a country should use force aggressively, violence, aggressively to defend or promote national interests. So that's the first definition, that you can use force attacking aggressively to defend or promote national interests. And then the second definition is a tendency to subordinate all other interests to the interest of the military. So the military becomes this preeminent institution in national life, and everything else is less important. And I think that we obviously are, based on those 2 definitions, the United States is a militaristic country.
Yeah, I would agree about that. Yeah, sure. I wrote here, is there a difference between militarism and imperialism? I don't know if you know this word.
Imperialism, I don't really know the technical definition, but it seems to me that it's very closely related. An imperialist country would also be a militaristic country. But I guess just for me personally, imperialism is more about like an economic approach. It's more about policy, a government policy, whereas militarism is almost more of a cultural attitude or a mentality. Sometimes we can also call it, in the United States, we call it American exceptionalism.
Yeah, I know the word exceptionalism.
The idea that something is not morally, objectively wrong or right. It depends on who is doing it. So if we're doing it, it's good, and if someone else is doing it, it's bad.
Exactly. That's why Donald Trump, he loves this hat with USA or America first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think what Trump is saying with that is more of a speaking out against the globalists and the
Okay.
global world government that
Okay.
and trade agreements that put us at a disadvantage and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, I know the answer you'll probably give, but I ask you nevertheless, what do you think about American invasions in Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, etc.? I
Right.
suppose you
Well,
are against.
pretty much, yeah. I'm not. Yeah, pretty much against, pretty much against all of it. You know, according to Catholic teaching, and there's something called the just defense theory, which
Exactly.
is a theory. It's not dogma. It's just a theory of state, of
Yeah.
how states should operate.
Yeah.
And really, you're only supposed to use force in defense, in
Yeah.
self-defense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a defense can become a very murky concept, because you can think if somebody's going to shoot me or kill me, I'm going to defend myself, right? Your bodily defense.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about in the United States is usually national interests.
Yes.
And when you get into defending your interests, that's usually what we're talking about when we talk about self-defense, because we in the United States have not been attacked directly, and so there really has been no justification for, I mean, you can get into a lot of different conversations about the domino theory and communism and all of that stuff. But we certainly were not attacked by Iraq. There was no reason for us to invade that country and attack them and occupy them. And three popes spoke out against that invasion and said it was not licit according to Catholic teaching. But Catholics in the United States were still, for the most part, gung-ho, following the government instead of following the church teaching.
Yeah. Are there special points in the Catholic Catechism where you can read the standpoints against militarism? Do you understand? The Catholic Catechism?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, where are the points against militarism?
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember them, but I suppose they are there. Maybe
they
you
are.
remember.
And I should have brought it with me. But if you look up the just defense theory, then
Yeah,
you'll
okay,
find it
I
there.
can find it there. Very good,
And
of course.
at least in the United States, our catechism, we used to call it the just war theory.
Yeah.
And now we call it the just defense theory. And
yes,
I think
defense
the reason,
theory. That's not the normal word. The normal word is the just war theory.
I think the reason they changed the word is to emphasize the fact that it is supposed to be meant for defense only. It's not.
That means it's the catechism that has been changed. The Pope has changed the word in the catechism.
In 2003, yes, I believe it was Pope Benedict who put out the new catechism.
Okay.
So now it's called the just defense theory. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you. Yeah, well, now I have written, maybe it's a stupid question, is Catholics Against Militarism recognized by the bishops in USA? What do they think about you?
I think we're too small. They don't even know about us.
They don't know about your existence.
Nobody knows about us. Nobody knows. We're pretty small.
Okay.
The YouTube channel has gotten a little bit of, sorry, there's a bug flying around. It's gotten a little bit of attention, but I don't think anybody at the higher levels we're small potatoes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you also answered the next question. How about exceptionalism? There is another word called supremacism. I don't know if I'm saying it the right way, but these two expressions are somehow connected. Supremacism, the idea that you're better than the others, and exceptionalism, you have the special rights.
Right. Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
I've heard some people saying that maybe the Catholics, they are some kind of supremacists. They think they're better than the rest of us, and yeah, could be. I'm not sure.
Well, I guess our teaching does say that we are the one true faith. The
Yeah,
Catholic religion is the one true faith. So I guess in a sense, but I don't think that means that any Catholic believes that because I'm a Catholic, I have more worth in the eyes of God than someone else. That's not Catholic. That's not Christian. That's not Jesus. So
exactly.
yeah.
Then you made one video. I saw it several times. I thought it was a real good video. It was about the CIA Pope. It was an interview with a very famous man called E. Michael Jones. Could you explain very short what is the idea? Who is the CIA Pope? It's
Well,
not
it was
Pope Francis.
so the reason for that interview was that we watched a movie that came out that was
Yeah.
called, oh, I'm forgetting the title of it now. Do you remember the title of the movie we were talking
No,
about?
but I've seen the movie, so but I don't remember the title. It was
It was a piece of propaganda, basically.
yeah, you're
All it
absolutely
was.
right.
Let's see. Oh, I'm looking it up right now on my phone. I'm
But
blanking. Oh, The Divine Plan.
the divine plan, yeah, that's
The
right.
Divine Plan came out in 2019. It celebrated the alliance between President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II during the Cold War.
Exactly.
And it it made it look as if this was a divine union between church and state to defeat communism. And I thought if anybody can give some perspective on this, it'll be E. Michael Jones. And Dr. Jones did a great job of kind of unpacking that and talking about why the movie was more like propaganda
Yeah,
than any kind of historical documentary.
absolutely. I saw the film inspired by your interview, and of course, I totally agree.
The
Well,
CIA is a very evil organization.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
they're
yeah,
involved in all kinds of evil things. Murder, mayhem, assassination, drug trafficking, possibly child trafficking, subterfuge, regime change. It's an evil organization, and President John F. Kennedy, our only Catholic president in the United States so far, actually said he wanted to break it apart and scatter into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. So he
okay.
saw it even back in the 1960s how evil it was. And in America now we have a term called the deep state, which
Yes, I know the
refers
word, yeah,
which refers to our unelected powers that be, the
yeah,
people in these agencies, the NSA, the CIA, the intelligence agencies, who many of us believe are really running the show.
yeah,
And it doesn't matter who gets elected. These people have a plan, and they do not want to share any power in the world with any other major powers. I think they're hell-bent on World War III, going to war with Russia, going to war with China. So a lot of us notice that no matter who we vote for, whether Democrat, Republican, our foreign policy never changes.
yeah.
Never changes. So
That I have a sticker in my kitchen saying it's if voting could change anything, it would be illegal.
exactly,
So,
exactly, yeah. So
well,
we as
and the
Catholics, I
Pope
think,
you're talking about is, of course, John Paul II. I think you said that. He came from
yeah,
Poland, and Poland, even today, it's a very anti-communist country, but they have found out that they have also enemies elsewhere, not only in Russia, also in Germany. And so they are being marginalized in the European Union. And actually, I would forecast that in the future, maybe Poland will leave the European Union because there are strong forces against them. And this has to do with their way of executing leadership. And is there a line from John Paul's II anti-communist crusade to the scandal of pedophilia in the church? What do you think about that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know. I know that it's come out that it seems that John Paul II did know a lot more about what was going on with the pedophilia thing. And it seems to me that we always talk about in the church pedophilia as if it's individuals who have disordered attraction, almost like it's an individual sin. But I think it's coming out more and more, especially with the McCarrick, what we call the Summer of Shame in the United States, and when the things came out about Archbishop or Cardinal McCarrick, that this is not just it's not just individual priests that have a private, personal predilection for pedophilia. This is a system, and it's a systematic problem that is in the church, and it's in our government as well, and it's in Hollywood, and there are entire networks that are engaged in sexual abuse of children and child trafficking, and it's really, really ugly, bad stuff. And so I think the church needs to wake up a little bit and stop talking about it as if it's personal, private people doing personal, private things. It's a system. And we in the United States are still waiting for our bishops to publish the report on Cardinal McCarrick, and they have not done it yet. And we want to know, because it wasn't just him. There was an entire network of people that were involved with this. And it's done for very nefarious reasons, for blackmail, to have control over people. So I think there probably is a connection between the U.S. government and these circles where this is a tactic that is used, and the Catholic Church, but I don't really have any proof of that. It just seems to me that we've got these different circles of scandal, and it would only make sense to me that on some level they're connected. I don't think it was a coincidence that McCarrick, who was at the center of all of this, happened to also be in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And that's just a feeling. It's just intuition. I don't have a lot of facts to really back that up. Yeah.
I think it's a very complicated question. Here in small Denmark, we have had 3 investigations of the church because our bishop, he was very suspicious about any kind of pedophilia. So the church made one round of interviews with every priest, and then they hired a company of lawyers to do the same in a more direct way. And at last, he went to the police and asked them to do the same. So every priest was interviewed 3 times, but they didn't find any pedophilia, but they found someone who had complaints against them as being pedophile, but it was never proven that they were actually pedophiles. So
wow.
They claimed themselves that it was totally untrue and false. What do you call it? False news, false claims against them. So,
wow.
but no one is talking about it anymore. At least here, I suppose in USA, it's quite a subject still today.
Well, it really kind of came to light, with the McCarrick stuff, but also it came to light in 2016 with the WikiLeaks release by Julian Assange, and people started noticing in the emails of some of these high-powered politicians and politically connected people, there was clearly code words being used. Clearly. I mean, there were code words that were being used for, children and different sexual preferences and things. And they dismissed the whole thing. The American media dismissed it, and they called it Pizzagate, and they called it an alt-right Pizzagate. Yeah.
Okay.
They called it an alt-right conspiracy.
Okay.
And so, they call everything a conspiracy when they don't want you to talk about it.
Yes, of course.
but it's been resurfacing lately. And I think more and more people are becoming aware of this as a problem in our institutions at the highest levels. So, yeah.
Well, we are coming close to the end of this interview, but I can't leave you without asking, what do you think will happen in November? You will have a new president. What do you think will happen, and what do you hope will happen?
Gosh, that's a hard one. There's a lot going on in our country right now with a lot of civil strife, a lot of polarization, a lot of rioting, protesting, and there's even been calls for a coup, basically, where leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement are saying, we can't wait until the election. We have to get rid of Trump now.
Okay.
It seems to me that the entire country is aligned against Trump. The Republicans don't like Trump. Democrats don't like Trump. The deep state doesn't like Trump. The media doesn't like Trump. Nobody likes him.
Only Putin is his only friend.
Yeah. But I think regular, everyday Americans who are not the media, who are not power players, do like Trump, and they like what he's done for our country.
Okay.
And I think Catholics, because he's been so good on the pro-life issue, I think Catholics really appreciate that. I can say one thing about Trump: he hasn't gotten us into any new wars.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
It's sad that we have to say that in our country now, that it's a good thing just to not have any new wars. But that's where we are because we start so many wars. And so I think he's got that going for him. But when it comes to that kind of stuff, it's hard to figure out where he is. I think he's probably going to get reelected if the election is allowed to work. But there's a lot of shenanigans going on right now where they're trying to fix the election so that, your dead grandmother who died in 1993 will be able to vote. There's a lot of election fraud and things going on. So and the deep state is so against Trump that it wouldn't surprise me if they figured out a way to finally get rid of him. Okay. Yeah.
So no one knows.
What about you? How do you all feel about Trump in Denmark?
Well,
you all, as if you're all one person. I know you're not one person, but
no,
how
of
do
course.
Catholics?
Well, as I've told you earlier, in Denmark, we accept that we are a very small country, so we have to accept and love the President of the United States, no matter who it is. And we don't have a choice. So it's like a forced marriage, in certain countries, women, they are told by their parents, you have to marry this man. And it's of no use that the woman say, I don't love him. Well, no one cares if you love him or what. You just have to marry him. And that's our situation. So most Danes really don't care. But all press in Denmark is very negative about Donald Trump, but we don't have any voting rights here in Denmark. I think if I was dictator in Denmark, I would ask Donald Trump and the Americans to make Denmark the 51st state in USA, because we are so. How you have 50 states now? Am I right? Mm-hmm. So you could have one more.
Why would you want that to happen?
Because we are subjugated to American politics under every circumstances. The only thing we need is to have a voting right. I know most Americans, they don't give a damn about the voting rights, and probably I wouldn't vote myself. But we need to have change. America, it's basically an experiment started by immigrants coming from Europe. And that's the big difference between America. You have many cultures, many ideas, also many differences. And your many everything. In Denmark is a very homogeneous culture. We have had the same culture for 1,000 years, the same line of kings, the same religion. Nearly, well, we had a Reformations, but the Protestants tell that the Reformation didn't change anything. I don't think that's quite true, but
Yeah. Well,
it would be good to have a change. And many European states, they have had big change in recent time. For example, Germany, they had big change after Second World War. Poland, they were non-existing for many years, and then they were restarted, and that's the same with many European countries. I think that's quite healthy.
Yeah. You know, Jacob, I think in recent years I've just become, I'm kind of at the point where I don't even know if I should vote as a Catholic, because the world of politics is not the kingdom of God.
It's not.
And it's not the way that we're going to bring the kingdom of God about. And I think we have to constantly remind ourselves that Jesus didn't come here to preach a political philosophy, or, I mean, we definitely have to figure that out. We have to apply as Catholics. We can't opt out of that, right? We have to figure out, you know, human society and how society should work. But we can't forget that Jesus, you know, I've been more interested in recent years in gospel nonviolence, Christian nonviolence. Jesus taught a nonviolent way of love of friends and enemies. And that is not compatible with the political world. And it's not the way the world operates. And so if we really allow Jesus into our heart, and we really begin to pay attention to what he said, more and more, I just think that that's where any change is going to come from. It can only come from the light of Christ. And, you know, it's interesting. I was watching a video on exorcism yesterday. Yeah, I don't know. And the exorcist was saying that it's not enough to exorcise a demon from someone if they're possessed. Because you've heard, I don't remember which scripture it is, but you've heard the story when Jesus took a demon out of a person.
Yeah.
7 more came back to take its place.
Okay.
And so, and I've been thinking about that with regard to the evil in the world and the evil that we're seeing. And we can, if we're going to we can't just get rid of the bad things and the evil things. We have to replace it with Jesus. Otherwise, it's just a big vacuum in our soul, and it'll be a big vacuum in our world. And we know what happens when there's a vacuum.
Yeah, sure.
So I've been thinking more about this lately, that there is no way to get rid of, to exorcise the demons from this world if we don't fill our souls with Christ and Christ's love for other people. And if we are going to avoid World War III, which is something that we both agree on, I think we all agree on, that's where it has to come from. You know, from each of us as Christians kind of rediscovering the teachings of Christ. In my opinion, we have to stop thinking about this just defense mentality, who gets to defend themselves and how, and start remembering what Jesus preached, which is a nonviolent love of everyone, friend and enemy. And if we could really live like that, we could change the world. And if our churches would actually preach this, we could educate people, and we could enlighten people. We'd have a completely different consciousness, you know, than worrying about the geopolitical situation as much as worrying about our own duty as Christians to follow Christ. And that's kind of where I am in my personal journey, I guess, lately.
Well, this was very beautiful said, and I think this should be the closing words for our interview here. I'll have to say thank you so much, Ellen, for your time and your wisdom, and for your wonderful YouTube channel. I hope many of my co-Catholics here in Denmark and Scandinavia, they'll look at your channel, and maybe they'll ask you about things I don't know.
Please come see the channel. We've got all kinds of interviews with different people, and it's not just American, and we don't really focus all that much on politics either. We talk a lot about spiritual issues and different saints, and things like that. I was going to ask you, Jacob, if you have one more moment.
Yes.
Who is your favorite Danish saint?
Well, what a wonderful question, because I should have asked you about the same. Of course, not Danish saints, but who is my favorite saint? That is, I'm not sure if I have a favorite saint, but I have several saints I like. But of course, Francis of Assisi, the priest in my church, they are Franciscans, and I like Saint Francis, of course. But also, me personally, I'm some kind of intellectual person, and therefore I should like Saint Dominicus. But when I was accepted in the church nearly 30 years ago, I was educated. You know, you have to be accepted in the church. You have to go through a program here in Denmark. It takes around 1 year. And I was educated by the Jesuits. We had a big Jesuit congregation, and I really admired these people. They were very, very good and very clever, and it made a lot of inspiration. And in my the biggest Catholic church in Copenhagen, where I'm a member, they have the Jesuit saint called De Loyola. His first name,
Saint Ignatius?
Ignatius de Loyola, of course, yeah. We have a big figure of him in the center of church. But probably there are other saints I should know much more about. But when I was educated as a Catholic, and I wasn't really told anything about saints. I was told everyone can be a saint. And so maybe my old mother, she's a saint. Of course, she's dead. But it depends on if you can be a saint without being a Catholic. To me, she was a saint. So she is probably my favorite saint. I think she was a big inspirational source for me. And but as I told you, she was not a Catholic. But maybe God, when he points at saints, he don't ask them for membership card for any church before he gives this title. I don't know.
Yeah.
In my heart, my mother is the biggest saint. I'm sorry to say that,
really?
But also the Catholic Church. Says the Catholic saints I've named. They are very big saints for me, and probably there are others. I've heard that should be some saint telling that basically you can't do anything useful in your whole life, so you can just stay inside a monastery. But I don't know enough about saintly history to give the name of these saints.
That's great, though. No, and it's funny because the two that you mentioned, St. Francis of Assisi and St. Ignatius of Loyola, they were both soldiers. And St. Francis of Assisi, marched off to go fight in the Crusades. He was on his horse, and he wanted to fight. And he got knocked off his horse, literally, and fell ill and went home. And that's when he realized that he was not supposed to be a soldier fighting, but he had to go build up God's church in a completely different way than what he had imagined. And the same thing with St. Ignatius of Loyola. He was also some kind of a knight or a soldier.
He was a soldier, yes, sir.
Yeah, he got wounded. And when he was wounded, he started reading the Bible. He started reading different materials. And it's almost like God stopped them in their tracks and said, that's not the way I want you to fight for me. And then that's when he had his big realization and discovered the spiritual exercises, and he became who he was because he had to stop being a military man and being a soldier. And God made him stop and reflect and then he ended up taking a completely new direction. So I always think of them as good anti-militarism saints.
Okay. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
question I forgot to give you, but it's very interesting. Who's the best saints for anti-militarist thought?
yeah. And
Most Danish Catholics, they are very focused about saints. I have to say that, but yeah, I never learned anything about saints when I was attended this schooling program. I think
oh,
Jesuits, they don't care much about saints.
I
Maybe
don't.
only about Ignatius de Loyola.
Yeah, I don't know much about the Jesuits anymore, but there's a book called The Lives of the Saints, and every day you can read about a saint. So that's one good way to get to know about them.
Okay.
But two other ones would be Saint Martin of Tours. I don't know if you've heard of
I don't
him.
know. Yeah, I heard the name, but I don't know anything about him.
He's a patron saint of conscientious objectors because he was a Roman soldier and he was in the military and he converted to Christianity.
Okay.
And then he decided he wasn't going to fight anymore. He couldn't fight in the wars of Rome as
Okay.
a Christian. And they
Okay.
said, "Oh, you're just afraid. You're just afraid." And he said, "No, I'm not afraid. Here, I'll throw down my sword and I will go out into the battlefield and God will protect me."
Okay.
And he offered to go to war without a weapon.
Okay.
And so then they said they thought he was crazy. And then there's Saint Marcellus of Tangier. Saint Marcellus was also a soldier and refused to fight. And he
Okay.
ended up being martyred for it. And his wife and his children got martyred for that decision as well. So in the
Okay.
early church, there are a lot of anti-war saints who, because they were devoted to Christ, could not go to war, could not kill other people in war.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and did you hear about the movie A Hidden Life? Did that
Hidden
make
Life? No, I don't think so.
it came out in December, and it's about a man named Franz Jägerstätter, who was
Yeah.
in Austria during World War II.
Okay.
And he was an Austrian peasant, uneducated, but a
Okay.
very devout Catholic. And when the Nazis came to his town and said, "You have to come fight with us," he said no, he wouldn't do it.
Mm,
And they made a movie about him. Terrence Malick made a movie about him called A Hidden Life. It just came out in 2019. It's
okay.
beautiful. So
Okay.
if you want to look into his life, he was beatified in, I think, 2009.
I see.
So
Okay.
he's on the path to sainthood because he refused to fight for the Nazis during World War II.
Mm,
And he was one of very, very few Catholics who made that choice. And he ultimately did pay with his life. But
yeah.
it's a beautiful story.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I know you know much more about saints than I do.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Uh,
Ellen, once again for your time and for your wisdom. I wish you and Catholics Against Militarism all the luck and
thank, thank you
much
so much.
many listeners and everything.